Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start. Kindly take your seats. We will begin with a short introductory video on understanding clouds. Good afternoon. My name is Jay Wilson. I work in the Regional Office for Africa here at WMO, and today I have the pleasure of being your Master of Ceremony. Mr. Petri Talas, Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, Mr. Bertrand Calpini, President of the WMO Commission for Instruments and Methods of Observation, Mr. Chi-Ming Chen, Director of the Hong Kong Observatory, Mr. Gavin Preterpini, Founder of the Cloud Appreciation Society, Ambassadors, Excellencies, Mr. Michel Jarraud, WMO Secretary General Emeritus, representatives of member states, students from the Boudet Middle School in Petit-Saconnet, guests, colleagues, and friends around the world. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome you to the 2017 World Meteorological Day ceremony. We are being webcast and streamed via Facebook Live around the world, and we therefore extend a special welcome to those joining us remotely. Before we start, I would like to inform you that interpretation is available in English on Channel 1 and in French on Channel 2. As you are aware, every year on the 23rd of March, we celebrate the coming into force of the convention that established the World Meteorological Organization in 1950. This year's theme is Understanding Clouds. The video that you have just watched is a time-lapse of about 150,000 photos taken between April and September last year in Florida in the United States. The video shows why throughout the centuries, clouds have inspired much scientific thought and artistic reflection. Clouds drive weather patterns, the climate system, and our water cycle, and they are central to the work of all meteorologists and hydrologists worldwide. A storm chaser and lightning photographer, Mr. Jack Miller wanted us to share with the audience how the film makes him appreciative of how beautiful and delicate the sky and clouds can be, and how dangerous they can also get. In his words, it's a perfect balance between beauty and evil that should be respected. Mr. Miller hopes that you have enjoyed watching the video as much as he did making it. We wish to extend our gratitude to Mr. Jack Miller for making this wonderful film available to us. Today, on World Meteorological Day, we are launching the long-awaited and digitized International Cloud Atlas. This atlas is the global reference for observing and identifying clouds. It contains hundreds of images submitted by meteorologists, photographers, and cloud lovers worldwide. Our first guest, Mr. Bertrand Calpini, joins us today from Météo Suisse. He is the president of the Commission for Instruments and Methods of Observation, which is responsible for the huge task of revising and updating the International Cloud Atlas. Mr. Calpini will tell us about this undertaking, as well as the scientific progress in observations that have improved our understanding of clouds. We are also pleased to welcome Mr. Gavin Preterpini, founder of the UK-based Cloud Appreciation Society, which was established in 2004. The society has 43,000 members in 110 countries and has greatly contributed to the public enjoyment and understanding of clouds. We will also be joined by Mr. Chi-Ming Chen, head of the Hong Kong Observatory, which hosts the web portal of the International Cloud Atlas. We thank all of our speakers for joining us today on this very special occasion. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like now to call upon Mr. Petri Talas, Secretary General of the WMO, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Talas.
Excellencies, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, WMO staff members, I would like to welcome you all to this celebration, and this is my second celebration in this capacity, and I have been celebrating this event in my home country for the past 35 years, so I'm a veteran of World Met Day. So I would like to tell you something about clouds from a science perspective, and there are also perspectives of clouds related to some problems that we are facing, and I will soon tell about those. But first I have to start by showing some history. So we are not first time celebrating this event. Actually, WMO or its ancestor IMO was established only in 1873, and we are the second oldest UN agency. We have the representative of the oldest UN agency. My colleague from ITU is also here, and of course we are respecting them a lot. And in 1873, the gender balance in Vienna, when IMO was established, was a little bit biased. I'm happy to see that the gender balance here is much better. And after the Second World War, WMO was established, and in 1951 it started operating, and the convention of WMO was ratified on 23rd of March in 1950, and that's why we are celebrating this day today. We just issued a status of climate report this week, and I will show you some slides from that report. So we have been breaking several not so pleasant records in temperature. We exceeded 1.1 degree warming level last year, and in 2015 we were breaking 1 degree warming level. And we have also seen high concentrations of greenhouse gases, and we were breaking records of both carbon dioxide, methane and N2O concentrations last year. So despite of this successful Paris Agreement, we are still moving in the wrong direction, if I would like to say. And in 2015 we were having very strong El Niño, which led to several problems worldwide, and the impacts of this El Niño was also seen last year. And at the moment we are facing drought problems in several parts of the world, especially in African countries, namely Somalia, northern part of Kenya, Yemen, and also South Sudan, and the problem is really severe. And we have also seen tropical storms, fairly intense tropical storms last year, and also flooding. At the moment there's severe flooding going on in Peru. There's been raining for several months in row, and they are having severe problems both economically and when it comes to human life and agriculture there. And if you look at some measurements for last year, here is the temperature record for the past 170 years, and you can see that this curve is going very strongly upwards, and there were some years ago, for example, in the last IPCC report, there was some discussion whether this warming trend is fading out, and if you look at this graph, it's not the case at all. And if you look at these temperature deviations where they took place, the more red color you have on the map, the more warm deviation we were facing, and at the high latitudes the deviations were clearly the largest, but worldwide we saw quite unusual temperature patterns. For example, in Kuwait, they were breaking 54 centigrades record last summer. Another message from this map is that we still have some areas where we don't have a long time series of observations, and especially on African map, you can see that there are white areas, and that's a common challenge for our whole community to improve the situation there. And I was just this week in World Bank signing a new agreement, and there's quite ambitious investment plan to support, for example, African countries in that respect. Then we have also seen quite unusual features in sea ice in both hemispheres, both in the Arctic and Antarctica, and these records are dating up to this week, and the Arctic sea ice level has been, extent has been clearly under the long-term averages, and we have been breaking records, and earlier records were measured in 2011, 2012. And also in the southern hemisphere we have seen unusual features. Usually the southern hemispheric deviations haven't been so large, but that seems to be the case now. Then a few words about clouds, and especially clouds and climate change. First of all, I would like to say that we are really lucky to live on this kind of planet. Astronomers have been seeking for similar conditions from the universe, and so far they haven't been able to discover such conditions elsewhere. We have the right gas composition, and we have the right distance to sun, and we have atmosphere that is transporting heat from the tropics towards poles, and we have also clouds and the weather patterns that are transporting humidity from the ocean areas to the land areas, and that's why we have such excellent conditions on this planet. But if we think of this climate science, clouds are also one of the sources of uncertainty when we estimate the future climate evolution, and actually water vapor is the most effective greenhouse gas. So changes in water vapor content and cloudiness, they are important for climate, and how to model them in a precise way, that's one of our challenges. Then this vertical structure of clouds, that's important issue, and how this convection, which means rising motion, how it's functioning, and what has happened so far and what's going to happen in the future. That's a hot topic when it comes to climate modeling community. Then we have also clouds which are related to storms, and here you can see some indications of tornado type of features, and clouds are also important factors behind hurricanes and typhoons. At the moment, WMO is organizing the Hurricane Committee meeting in Costa Rica, and some of our staff members are there. And what's going to happen again in the future to those storms, and especially the most intense tropical storms, that's a good question, and we have seen quite devastating tropical storms taking place during recent years. Then we have these tropical rain belts, and that's one of the issues also for climate science, what's going to happen to these belts in the future. And the most recent IPCC report indicated that we could have more rain, not only at the high latitudes, but also in the tropical zones, and there's a possibility to see greening of the Sahara, for example, if the model runs are correct. And then we have also a little bit unpleasant features related to clouds, and I will show you 3 examples of those. First, there are very beautiful clouds that are observed in both Arctic and Antarctic stratosphere. You need minus 85 degrees temperatures before these stratospheric clouds are formed. And what is special is that on the surfaces of those clouds, chlorine and bromine, which is coming from freon and halon compounds, is released to reactive form, and that causes this both Antarctic and Arctic ozone depletion. And the founders of this mechanism got the Nobel Prize in '95, Crutzen, Molina, and Rowland. And we have seen also this thing to take place in the Arctic, and on this graph you can see that there's something missing at the 20 kilometers altitude, and that's because of these clouds that have been releasing chlorine and bromine to reactive form. Luckily in the Arctic this so-called polar vortex is not so stable, and that's why we don't see those things happening very often. Then we have seen a success story in global environment policy, namely the Montreal Protocol, which was signed in '87. We have started seeing healing of so-called Antarctic ozone hole, and ozone depletion last year wasn't as severe as before, and we expect to see gradual healing of the ozone. And the ozone experts will actually come here in this building next week to discuss connections between ozone depletion and climate change. So we have seen a cooling of stratosphere because of climate change, whereas there's been warming of the lower atmosphere, and this ozone depletion has also impact on climate in the lower atmosphere. So that's a research topic at the moment. Then we have also pollution-related cloud dimension, and here on the satellite picture you can see that there are some areas where we have lots of red color. And if you look at the Sahara and, for example, this western part of China, that's very much coming from the sand, but there are also areas where we can see red color, which is coming from human emissions, and we are talking about so-called brown cloud in large parts of Asia, and there are fairly high concentrations of pollutants, for example, in big cities in China, India, and sometimes also in Indonesia there are problems related to that. And in Europe, the Po Valley, for example, is an area where we have highest concentrations of particles, and you can see also Mexico City or Santiago as areas with pollutants. And these pollutants are having a fairly negative impact on human health, and they are also challenged when it comes to visibility, for example. They are enhancing the concentrations of fog, and sometimes, for example, in China there are problems with air navigation because of the low visibility related to this pollution and normal fog. And the third example is related to sand and dust storms. That's a natural feature, and we are running a center. We are running actually 4 centers worldwide which are forecasting sand and dust storms, and for example, our colleagues in Spain at IMET, they are hosting a center which is very much producing such information for African countries. And these sand and dust storms, they have also severe impacts on human health. They are a challenge for air transportation and also road transportation, and they are also a component in desertification problem. This is the deviation of rainfall amounts for last year, and we haven't seen such features that were taking place in 2015 related to this strong El Nino, but in total we have seen areas where we have seen more rainfall than normally, for example here in Central Asian region, and also in some high latitude regions, and vice versa. We have seen drought, for example, taking place in Southern African countries, Eastern African countries, and also Central Southern American region. And one of the things where some countries are putting lots of emphasis is cloud seeding. We have, for example, plenty of Arabic countries where they are suffering because of lack of rainfall, and they are supporting and working together with WMO to run scientific programs to study whether we could enhance the amount of rainfall, and that's a big issue for quite many of our member countries. We don't yet know how effective these mechanisms are, but it's heavily studied, and there's lots of political expectation behind those. And as Jay said, today we are going to release this WMO International Cloud Atlas, and I would like to thank Bernard Calpini and Meteos Fish for their great contribution, and also the Hong Kong Observatory for great contribution, and also my own staff for the work that you have been doing for this. And during the lunch we were discussing whether there would be an opportunity to nominate the new cloud type Calpinus, just to pay tribute to our CIMO president, but so be careful that name may appear in the future. And those of you who like aesthetic things, we released our this year calendar, and there are plenty of beautiful clouds also embedded there. So with these words, I would like to welcome you to celebrate this event with us, and have been pleased to work with excellent experts here in my organization, and besides being high-level professionals, they are also very good in gastronomy, and you are all invited to the top floor of this building, where we have the best view in the whole city, and we have also the best food which is cooked by our staff members. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Talas. And now we will hear from Mr. Bertrand Calpini, President of the WMO Commission for Instruments and Methods of Observation, commonly known as CIMO, a graduate of the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. Mr. Calpini was a member of the Southern Hemisphere Additional Ozone Sound Team, also known as SHADOWS. They were honored with the prestigious NASA Group Achievement Award for raising international standards of ozone research, and their project serves as a model for international collaboration and provided essential data for assessing global climate change. Mr. Calpini has also been a tireless advocate for the revised International Cloud Atlas, which he describes as WMO's visiting card. It is thanks to the dedication of the CIMO International Cloud Atlas Task Team that the Atlas has today become a reality. Mr. Calpini.
Thank you very much. And dear Excellencies, dear all, dear friends here, it is my pleasure to start with my presentation. So basically the first argument will be why do we need a new edition of the Cloud Atlas? And you will see in the first picture a book which dated back to about 30 years from now. And of course, when at that time, this document was the absolute reference. But it's already 30 years ago. So you can easily imagine that from that period of time, due to cloud lovers, people that are working hard on observing those clouds, we have had more and more of any sort of information around clouds. And in a way, this document dated 30 years ago was sort of, covered by new ideas, new definitions of all sorts of types. So what is the mission of the World Meteorological Organization? It is really to define one reference, to have one website where we could say, this is it. This is where you go when you want to understand the current reference for cloud determination, cloud names, and so on. For my commission of instrument and method of observation, we can summarize the two missions of this commission as simple as that. Promote high quality of observational data, measurements, and make sure that they are done in a similar manner worldwide. So most of the work we do is related to automatic technologies. We talk about weather radar, we talk about automatic weather station, satellite, lightning detection. Now, the beauty of today is that also the human observer, you all, when you go outside of this room, you look at the sky, and you are also contributing to this source of measurements. But simply looking at the sky, and the best thing we could do when considering this lack of reference was to say the next edition of the Cloud Atlas will be the undisputed global reference worldwide, the authoritative document. And this is what we've been working on. So basically when we start the project, let's say end of 2012, early 2013, we define a number of, terms of reference. Where do we go from now to that new success? So the first thing we say is that we move from a book to a website. And this is a sort of revolution, having a reference that is a website, which means our website will be very much frozen, because it has to be the reference. But part of it must be dynamic. So we have a challenge here, but I think it's a nice one. It's probably one breakthrough to have this new information in this form. Of course, we revised totally the text in this, the image first. The image, second the text, and very important also, the definition of the words. You have heard many, and you have seen many of those Latin names, and they each of them have a meaning and a definition that goes behind. We have expanded this new edition with a number of clouds, and you will see, today the website is open. Just play with the website, you will discover those new clouds. Here, there's one very important information. This decision aid for professional was already available in the previous version. Now we have also added another one for amateurs. So you have a decision aid, again, go outside, use your tablet or look at the sky and try to challenge yourself. Am I able to recognize the clouds that I see today? Thanks to the new edition of the Cloud Atlas. And you will succeed, I'm sure. Very important to say that today with this IT solution, you have the pictures and you have the meta information. I'll go back to that perspective because in a way, this new edition is a sort of integrated view of all type of method of observation, all type of measurement. You will see satellite, you will see radio sound, you will see pressure maps that explain the type of cloud that you see. This brings much more than just a, so to say, frozen book. And finally, and this is my last message, in the perspective over the years, we really wanted to develop a tool that would be designed to help education and training. Because beauty to have a reference, but if no one uses it, you fail. So at the end, if we do so, we will overcome the current proliferation of non-standard international cloud atlas. So this was really the challenge we had. 30 years of not showing the flag. Today, here we are. We have the new website. So in terms of the real work, you go into the document, and this is what the task team has done. You discuss the pictures, you select the pictures. We have received thousands of pictures anywhere in the world. And those few experts, you will see them, they go through all those pictures. They do the new definition of the glossary. They consider which type of clouds, cloud classification, new identification guide. So they went really through, and this is many years of many experts working on this. So really understand the importance of that effort. So 11 new cloud classification, 1 new species, supplementary features, accessory clouds. You see also those clouds that are like flamma genitus, when there's a huge fire, it may induce clouds that now are defined as so into this new edition. So on one side, the task team doing this huge effort of the content, the real reference content. On the other side, an incredible contribution by the Hong Kong Observatory. So the next speaker will be my dear colleague C.M. Shan, head of the Hong Kong Observatory, but there, huge support by the IT colleagues and the work done from Hong Kong together with us to promote and to put in place this www.wmocloudatlas.org, which is now the website from which we have this reference. So you have in this website these 10 genera, and then you go into the clouds. And now I just took one example, and I want to insist on the small graph you see below the picture. So you have a picture of a cloud, and the thing you discover is the type of pressure situation in which this cloud was formed, and as well, you get an idea of the stability of the atmosphere, that is the radio zone in the surrounding of where this cloud was observed, as well as you have the picture of the satellite of how this cloud was formed. So again, it brings much more information than just having one picture and a few sentences. So all this is done by a great team. And this great team is coming from all over the world. You know that this is also the principle. We are a member of National Met Services, as so we work for free for WMO. So it's a challenge to have so wonderful experts being involved and not discussing about any sort or type of salary. And now you see the picture, and I think great applause to So in short, what is the new edition of the Cloud Atlas? I would give 3 words for that new edition. I think it's a web-based world reference, and this is quite something where I'm very proud of. I think the second point is that we merge together the science of human observer and technologies, automatic technologies. This is the second win. And the third win is that this is a unique tool to understand and learn about clouds. À ce point de mon exposé, j'aimerais vous redire ici que, comme représentant de la Suisse, comme membre de Météo Suisse, je suis touché, ému de pouvoir présenter ce développement. Je trouve que la Suisse est un support pour ce monde ouvert, international, et finalement, si on peut proposer à WMO sa nouvelle visiting card and not business card, you told it very correctly. Je pense que c'est une magnifique contribution. J'aimerais vous remercier pour votre attention.
Thank you, Mr. Calpini. And now we would like to watch a short introductory video about the new International Cloud Atlas.
Clouds are beautiful and ever-changing. For meteorologists, cloud observations are essential for understanding current weather and predicting its evolution.
Welcome to the new edition of the International Cloud Atlas, the 2017 web portal. This is the world reference for observing and classifying clouds and other weather phenomena.
The atlas contains pictures, definitions, and explanations that are accepted and used by all 191 member countries and territories of the World Meteorological Organization. The atlas ensures that meteorological cloud observations everywhere in the world are reported using the same precise system. This new edition is the first update of the atlas since 1986 and our first web-based version. It remains true to past editions, but it also contains many updates and new features. As agreed by all countries, several additions have been included in the classification scheme so that some observable cloud features can be more clearly reported. The text has been revised for clarity and to reflect the latest scientific understanding. We now have higher quality images with clearer captions and annotations. We also include thermodynamic profiles, radar images, and other context describing how the clouds were formed. Weather phenomena such as dust or fog are enhanced with images and detailed information within the images. A glossary of terms has been added to provide explanations of less common words.
I hope you will find this new edition of the Cloud Atlas as a useful reference. The new edition of the Cloud Atlas can serve as a learning and teaching tool, but also as a collection of beautiful pictures.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for this part of the ceremony, we will travel to Hong Kong through a video link with Mr. Chi Min Shun, the director of the Hong Kong Observatory. Mr. Shun is the president of the WMO Commission for Aeronautical Meteorology and the chairman of the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. He also led a team of researchers to develop the world's first and award-winning light detection and ranging wind shear alerting system for the Hong Kong International Airport. The Hong Kong Observatory has for many years hosted WMO's World Weather Information Service website and developed the popular My World Weather mobile phone app for WMO. The observatory's expertise and generosity has now extended to hosting the web portal of the International Cloud Atlas, allowing meteorologists and cloud enthusiasts unlimited viewing access to these images. Mr. Shun?
Your Excellencies, Professor Talas, this afternoon I'm really honored to be able to present on the World Meteorological Day about our involvement in the generation of the International Cloud Atlas website. As Dr. Capini has mentioned, this is the first breakthrough in 30 years that we now can reach out to every public in the world with an online website. And not just a website that is accessible through computers, but also through every mobile device, so that photographers, amateurs, and weather friends can make use as a very important reference. It has a large number of fantastic weather photos and photos of optical phenomena. It's really a treasure trove. And this time, it's not just updated with more than 600 color images, but it also contains very impressive time lapses of cloud formation. I'm going to show you this video that was taken by an amateur from Hong Kong on a Flammagenitus cloud that was captured while she traveled in Canada. So we can see the impressive cloud formation. And this is one of the new special cloud type as well. And we are also delighted that one of the supplementary feature newly introduced actually has a very popular reach out to the general public. This is the apparatus. And apart from including this new cloud supplementary feature, in fact, it has inspired many amateurs, weather friends, and photographers in Hong Kong. You can see that this is a press coverage just last week when we spotted this impressive cloud in Hong Kong. And it's actually carried by international media the other day. So the contribution of the new cloud atlas.
Excuse me, Mr. Shan. My apologies. Could you please share your screen?
Oh. It has been stopped. Can you see it now?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. So while I was on this page on the new cloud supplementary feature of Espiritus, it actually inspired Hong Kong people to make this capture just last week. So we can see the contribution of the new atlas. And another one that we also have inspired the public is the force recall or the carbon new supplementary feature. Also created a lot of interest with the general public in Hong Kong. And in fact, it allows us to produce very beautiful calendars for the observatory to further promote with the public. And also, we could utilize such impressive images for public educational purposes, like appearing on television to show what we could achieve with all these impressive photos. And also try to arouse the interest of the public in understanding weather and climate. And of course, cannot not mention this new cloud species, the rogue cloud or volatus, which is a very rare phenomenon. As a matter of fact, I think it is very well known as a morning glory in northern part of Queensland in Australia, that weather fans and amateurs actually flew all the way to the location to capture it. As soon as we know that it is a new cloud species, in fact, it also inspired us to take another look on what we could capture in Hong Kong. And you can see that, in fact, this has inspired our Hong Kong people actually to look for this cloud and manage to find it even in Hong Kong. So again, the International Cloud Atlas had made a very good outreach. And if you are not just an amateur but really want to understand more about the phenomena, the website could allow a search for the various cloud types, such as this commonly known cloud type cumulonimbus. And we can also see impressive lightning captured by photographers here, also from Hong Kong. But to me, providing also other observations like the weather radar, really to me is revelation, because as you can see, the radar actually captured this cloud, which actually lies some more than 50 kilometers away from us, but which gives us such an impressive photo. So this is helps us understand and appreciate the nature, and also for the public wish to understand differences between different weather phenomena. The website also allows an in-depth study and comparing different phenomena by comparing two different photos with a lot of technical details, which is very educational. And the International Cloud Atlas also have the posters and flow charts, which can allow us to utilize the information to classify clouds for the observers. In Hong Kong, in fact, the story that we have is not just for the technical use, but also in promoting the information and the appreciation of clouds with the public, using a community network which managed to help the students to learn by doing, and also to crowdsource weather photos from around Hong Kong, and also inspiring a lot of newcomers and learn how to observe the sky. And it really helped us to outreach with calendars, with even issuance of stamps with the title of weather phenomena, and producing educational videos, and also enhancing engagement with the students, with the public on observations on weather and on climate. So I really appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the updating of the International Cloud Atlas, and I'm particularly grateful for the great support by the WMO Secretariat and the Commission for Instruments and Methods of Observation. Last but not least, my special thanks to the expertise, the hard work, and more importantly, the dedication and passion of all members of the International Cloud Atlas task team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shen, and we apologize for the minor glitches. We will now see a selection of photos from the International Cloud Atlas. They're submitted by hundreds of professional and hobby photographers and meteorologists around the world. It is now my privilege to introduce Mr. Gavin Pretor-Pinney, founder of the Cloud Appreciation Society, which campaigned for WMO to classify a dramatic, wave-like cloud called asperitas, which means roughness in Latin. The campaign caught the public and media attention and earned WMO a great deal of press coverage. We are also pleased to announce that asperitas does indeed feature in the new atlas with a photo selected from a competition by the Cloud Appreciation Society. Based in the UK, Mr. Pretor-Pinney is an international best-selling author of books that include The Cloud Spotter's Guide, The Cloud Collector's Handbook, and The Wave Watcher's Companion. For the latter, he won the Royal Society Winton Prize for Science Book, an award that is considered the world's most prestigious prize for popular science writing. Mr. Pretor-Pinney is also a TV and radio presenter, as well as a visiting fellow at the Department of Meteorology at the University of Reading. A TED Global speaker, his talk entitled Cloudy with a Chance of Joy has over 1.2 million views and is described as a call for us all to take a step off the digital treadmill, lie back, and admire the beauty in the sky above. Mr. Gavin Pretor-Pinney, please.
Hello, start again. All these Latin names, they are quite nerdy. It would have dawned on you by now that you're in the company of cloud geeks. We're talking about these supplementary features and terms like volutus and so on. And I thought maybe we'd just start with the first cloud geek. If we could just get the presentation up on the screen, that would be great. There we go. This fellow. He was an Englishman. He's quite an intense stare, isn't it? He was an Englishman called Luke Howard. And he was a Quaker. He was a pharmacist by trade. He lived in London. And in 1802, he stood up and gave a talk to his scientific debating society. And it was called On the Modification of Clouds. Modifications means classifications at that time. And he came up with these terms, cumulus, cirrus, stratus, and the like. And this really resonated. This idea was that we have Latin terms, we have these Latin terms for describing plants and describing animals. Well, why don't we use them for describing the sky, describing the clouds? It was an odd idea at the time. There'd always been considered these completely chaotic formations. But it really resonated with the audience, and then when he was persuaded to write a paper for a scientific magazine, it resonated with the public and led to this growth of interest in naming clouds, which had influence throughout the burgeoning science of meteorology, and also with artists and poets. The Romantic poets were very influenced by Luke Howard. So this all led towards the end of that century to the first International Cloud Atlas, because names had been added over the years from what Luke Howard started with in 1802 when he did this talk. Names had been added, and eventually in 1896 the first edition of the International Cloud Atlas came out, and this was like, let's stop having these different terms being described by people all around the world, let's have one standard. So it all really started with Luke Howard. And you may be wondering, in the back of your mind, does it really matter? I mean, does it matter to have a name for these formations? I love looking up at the sky. You might think, I love a beautiful sunset. But do I need to know the names of them, of the formations up there? I want to argue emphatically, yes, that it does matter to name what's going on in the sky. Because it matters from a scientific point of view, as we've been hearing, in terms of being able to standardize the observations from all around the world and ensure that people are talking about the same thing when they describe the clouds around the world. But it also matters from a human point of view, because the way us humans work, when we know the name of something, we begin to know it in a different way. And when we begin to know it, we begin to care about it. So that's something I really want to demonstrate to you. You're going to think I am, of course, biased because I started the Cloud Appreciation Society. I started it 11 years ago. And this is the society that, well, through the photographs people have sent us over the years from around the world, we spotted a pattern. And this is what led to this one cloud, the Asperitas cloud, that's been included, as you've heard, in the new edition of the International Cloud Atlas. And the society exists for people who around the world believe that the sky and the clouds are the most evocative, dynamic, and poetic aspect of nature. And that it's perhaps something we don't pay enough attention to, what's going on up in the sky, to sit back every now and then and just pay some attention to the way the clouds are moving, to the way they grow in these beautiful, brilliant white mounds. They seem to appear from nowhere and disappear again into the blue in a sort of magical way, in a way that feels almost like thoughts or feelings. When you become a member of the society, you get a badge, of course, you've got to have a badge. and you also get a certificate with your name on it. We do hereby certify, and puts your name on this date, joined the society on this date, and will henceforth seek to persuade all of the wonder and beauty of clouds. All who listen of the wonder and beauty of clouds. So this campaigning element to the society is a very important one, because I feel that clouds get a bit of a bad press quite often. I mean, here we're sitting and looking at the beauty of them, but if you think just more generally in the way people talk about clouds, people think of them as just the things that get in the way of the sun quite often. You notice a cloud perhaps only because it changes the sunlight. When it gets between you and the sun and a shadow's cast on the ground, and you think, oh, there's a cloud got in the way. So we begin to think of clouds as the sort of obstructions in life. We just begin to think of them as the things that get in the way. And that is, of course, a terrible way to look at the sky, and it's a terrible sort of belittling of clouds, in my opinion. You know, if we didn't have clouds, we'd have to look up at cloudless monotony day after day. We'd never be able to look up and go, wait a minute, that one looks like a dog, a great big dog, or a goldfish. We'd never be able to say, look, there's a witch on a broomstick over Sydney. These photographs are all sent in from members around the world, and they're on our photo gallery. We also have photographs sort of submitted through our app. These are like, you know, I think if you pay attention to the shapes you see in the sky, you'll save money on psychoanalysis bills. They're like those, nature's version of those ink blot images, aren't they, that shrinks used to show their patients in the 60s. So I guess if you're feeling anxious about stuff, you might look up and see there's a grim reaper on the horizon, or perhaps a skull over the mountain. They're also just invitations for our imagination. They are a way for our imaginations to be playful, to allow just thoughts that have no meaning and no significance. So the kind of bizarre sort of things you can see in the sky are things like, you know, the abominable snowman going to rob a bank. Can you see the gun? Or perhaps an angel with a camcorder. So this might sound quite frivolous here in the World Meteorological Organization to be looking at clouds in the shape of things. Might sound quite different from the scientific side of cloud observation, but actually they're not that different. You know, these names, these Latin classifications, they are largely also to do with the altitude of clouds in the troposphere, the part of our atmosphere where that happens. But they're also about the way the cloud looks. They're Latin terms about what it looks like. And when you put it in Latin, it all sounds official. But it's the same spirit. So I think it's high time we just revised a little bit the different classifications of clouds. I don't want you to leave here learning about the importance of the cloud atlas and not learning about the clouds themselves. All right, so here's a little tour of the sky. And let's start with this cloud here. All right. If anyone has an idea of what type of cloud this is, would you put your hand up and you'd like to contribute what you think this cloud is? It's an easy one, I'll give you that. Nothing. We're going to have to go to the cloud geek to answer. It is indeed a cumulus cloud, that's absolutely right. It's cumulus. There you go. Look, where did I put it? Yeah, here we go. I think you better have a cloud badge, don't you? A cloud badge to Mr. Calpini. Well, if anyone's going to know the answer, he is, right? It's kind of cheating. I want some answers from the audience as well. So that's the cumulus cloud we have there. Yeah, this is a fair weather cloud. The Latin name means a stack or a heap. That's just the way it looks. It's like a clumpy cloud. It's the most solid looking one. It's the one that forms on a sunny day. That's why it's known as the fair weather cloud. And it's like the generic one. Close your eyes, think of a cloud. It's probably a cumulus that comes to mind. And that's why it's always the one that features in children's drawings. You know, up in the sky, they've got cumulus clouds. And no picture is complete without those cumulus clouds of a house and a levitating family. You know, you've got to have the cumulus clouds up in the sky. And the way these form, here's the thing about this being a fair weather cloud. They form on convection currents. So you can think of a lava lamp. And the lava lamp is powered by convection. At the bottom you have this a bulb, and the bulb produces heat as well as light, and that heats up the wax at the bottom, and it expands and this floats upwards, and you get this movement. And the same thing happens outside on a sunny day with the gases of the atmosphere. Sun heats the ground acts like the heat source, warms the air above it, causes it to rise upwards in a thermal, and that thermal can, as it cools, some of the moisture in it can condense into droplets. So that's a cumulus cloud, all right, one of the general cloud types. General means one of the 10 main types, the genera of clouds. How about this one? Any thoughts? Hand up. Have to put your hand up. I didn't see a hand. Which cirrus? Cirrus cloud, absolutely right. Yes, you're well done. You put your hand up. You can get, it's a cirrus cloud. There you go, embroidered patch. Yeah, show that on your cloud spotting anorak. Okay, the cirrus cloud. Cirrus is the Latin for, this is like, looks like kind of hair blowing across the blue. And cirrus is the Latin for a lock of hair. So these are made of ice crystals, these clouds. They're high clouds, those low cumulus, generally water droplets. And these high clouds, ice crystals. And as these ice crystals fall from the upper reaches of the troposphere, they pass through differing layers of our atmosphere where the wind's directions and speeds differ, and where the moisture content and the temperature can differ. And you get this sense of movement of these clouds as the ice crystals descend and pass through these different conditions. I like to think, I'm talking about knowing the names of these clouds and that helping us to form a relationship with the sky. Well, if you think of those cumulus clouds, once you know those, you think of those are the ones that are good for finding shapes in. So all those shapes we saw at the beginning, or most of them, were cumulus clouds. And they give it a sense of the kind of carefree nature of cloud spotting, where it's an aimless pastime, cloud spotting. And I'd like to point out, aimless doesn't mean pointless. So something can be aimless. It can mean that it's a lifting of your attention from the concerns down here on the ground, from the stresses of your work or school, or from the terrible news that we see on the TV. To lift your attention away from that is a valuable aspect of the sky for us humans. And in the case of cirrus, maybe it's more like the slow movement, because these are high clouds, so the way they move is gradual and graceful. So to tune in to the sky is to slow down. The clouds up there, the ice crystals are moving fast, very fast sometimes, but from away down here, they appear to develop slowly and gradually. Right, general type number 3. Cloud, this is the third of these main cloud types. Hands up, any ideas? Yes? Cumulonimbus, that is absolutely right. It is indeed a cumulonimbus cloud. You're looking at me and wondering what you're going to get. You're going to get a little cloud identification thing. Turn the dial and you'll be able to spot the different cloud types. You've got the 10 main types on one side, and there on the other side you've got some other clouds. Well done, Mr. Cumulonimbus. I was slightly concerned to realise that, of course, the Kelvin-Helmholtz cloud name has changed. The Roll cloud name has changed. The full streak hole cloud name has changed. They've all been given Latin terms. I'm going to have to reprint it. Oh well. So, cumulonimbus is the king of clouds. This is the thundercloud, the storm cloud. It might reach maybe 10 miles, 15 kilometers up into the atmosphere. It spreads out in this distinctive shape at the top here, and it is what produces thunder and lightning and hailstones. So this is like an embodiment of the power that drives our atmosphere. It is like a visual manifestation of the energy that is contained in the atmosphere. And I like to think of it, again, if you think about what this knowing these names mean and how they help us to link to what's going on in the sky, I like to think of the cumulonimbus cloud as being one that reminds us of our connection to the atmosphere. We think of ourselves as people, as animals who live on the ground, which we do walk around on the ground, of course, but we inhabit the atmosphere. We don't live beneath the sky, we live within the sky. And this part of our surroundings is a shared, unifying element of the earth. And so to be around a storm, to be near to a storm, is to be engaged and to be given a sense of the visceral connection we have to the weather around us. And for that reason, I think the cumulonimbus clouds are great reminders of us that we inhabit this atmosphere rather than are just separated away from it. So then moving on to some more specific ones. I'm not going to ask you any more questions, don't get tense, all right? I asked you questions with the main types. But we're now getting to a few more particular forms. So lenticularis comes from the Latin for a lentil. This is a species of cloud, and so you would add it on to one of the main cloud types. Altocumulus is one of the 10 main cloud types. Lenticularis, a species, would be added on afterwards. So if you have a clumpy cloud that's in the middle altitude of the troposphere, if it looked like a lentil or like a flying saucer, you would call it lenticularis. And these can look very dramatic when the sun is low in the sky. As you can see when it's being lit from sideways from a sunset. All those 4 grey sea lions are of course members of the Cloud Appreciation Society. So this often looks like a UFO, and it's kind of, that's a value in itself. I like that. And it forms in the region of mountains. So downwind of a mountain, in stable atmospheric conditions, the airstream comes across this enormous obstacle of the mountain. And as the wind rises to pass over the obstacle, when conditions are stable, downwind of the peak, you can get the wind kind of rising and dipping in this wave-like undulating path. And the lenticularis cloud can form at the crest of these invisible waves of air. So the air is rushing through, but the position of that wave is called a standing wave. The position of that wave is fixed relative to the position of the mountain. And so when you see it on time-lapse, you can see the movement of the winds, but the position of the cloud itself is fixed. All the droplets form with the wind, and they blow through the cloud, and so they condense at the front, they rush through the cloud with the wind, and they evaporate at the back. It's all to do with cooling as it rises and warming as it sinks. So that's a lenticularis cloud. And then some of these ones that have been given new names, I think we should get really familiar with those. These are terms that were previously English or in different languages, the classification names, and they weren't officially brought into the Latin naming system. So the full streak hole is one example of this. It's now been given the name carvum, and this is what's called a supplementary feature, if you want to get nerdy about it. These are where you've got a cloud layer that is made of droplets, but these droplets are extremely cold. They're super cooled. Okay, it's quite common up in the sky, and very common in fact, for water to exist as a liquid in droplet form well below 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It doesn't freeze like we might expect water to down here on the ground. It stays liquid at maybe minus 15 Celsius, minus 20. And at some point, you will find that as the temperatures cool, freezing will begin, and it can be set off by various things, but freezing will begin in some region, and as it does so, the ice crystals grow, they expand, they join, and they splinter, and they form the seeds for more ice to form. So you get this spreading hole, known as the fall streak hole. Then there's one of my favourites, the Kelvin-Helmholtz wave cloud. I've always thought that was a bit of a tongue twister as a name, so it's great news that the WMO have now given this the term fluctus, a Latin term, much snappier, named after two people who studied turbulence, who were researchers in turbulence. So it's good to have that now added to the naming system. This beautiful cloud formation looks like a series of breaking waves, and it's caused with the shearing of winds in between, with a cloud layer in between. The tops of these undulations that result from the shearing winds curl over in vortices. So the fluctus is a wonderful cloud. And then finally, I just want to talk about this roll cloud. So this, as we heard, has been given the term volutus. I was one of those people who went to see this in Australia, this morning glory cloud, which is an example of a roll cloud. And I saw it in a book. I was curious about it, especially when I discovered that glider pilots cross Australia, where this particular example of the roll cloud forms in northern Queensland, to surf it, like surfers on an ocean wave. And I was curious about this because I thought, that's amazing as a cloud appreciator for these guys to be surfing it. They go around there, they sit about waiting for the cloud to form, end of September, beginning of October time in northern Queensland, and when they turn up and it forms, they all rush up in their planes and surf it. So I went there, managed to find a way of getting there, and this is the main high street in Burketown where the cloud happens, and it's kind of only 180 people live there in the middle of the outback. There's a restaurant, the Morning Glory restaurant, was closed for the 2 weeks I was there. Every morning I would go out and look out on the horizon to the east. There's nothing much in this town. There's a cafe and a pub and a post office. I'd look off to the east waiting for this cloud to appear, and you'd see photographs in the post office up on the wall of this roll cloud, but it didn't come throughout the whole week. I was sitting there waiting for it, and then we're halfway through the second week and it still hadn't turned up. I was getting quite stressed out by this stage, especially when the glider pilots who were there talking to me in the pub said, oh yeah, it's quite common. People stand around for 2 weeks, doesn't turn up. They stay for another week, still doesn't turn up, and they finally go home and it always comes the next day. So I said, that can't happen to me. I've come a long way here from the UK to see this. One of them said, why don't you go and see Dawn, who's the Aboriginal lady who lives on this island, Bentinck Island, just off the coast. She has a dance that brings the wind that carries the morning glory. So I went over there and I met Dawn. She did the dance. All right. I did actually do a little film of this. I'll show you in a minute, but I didn't film Dawn. But you can see here her dance. Get the idea of it. Lots of clapping, stamping, shouting, and then the next day nothing happened. So I was getting quite stressed, and then someone said, look, there are a couple of signs, look out for the pub. In the pub, there's a beer fridge. If it mists up the windows of the beer fridge, that's a sign. And if the tables in the cafe curl a little bit, that's another sign that there's enough humidity in the air for this cloud formation to form. So, I was thinking, oh, yeah, right, whatever. And then I went into the pub that evening. And of course, having checked at the cafe, things were looking good. And it came the next day. I'm going to show you a little video of the glider pilots talking about what it's like to surf a cloud.
These glider pilots are about to go surfing on a wave of air which forms around a cloud called the Morning Glory. The cloud is in the shape of an enormous tube and rolls in at first light over the coast of Queensland from Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria. It offers what's got to be the most exciting gliding experience in the world.
You get on it, come over the face, and you can surf down. You can have a wing in the cloud and surf right down to the bottom edge.
The absolute smoothness, being able to travel at high speed, the burst movements of the controls, that's completely different to how you normally fly a glider.
Very often you'll get a very strong primary cloud which rolls along very quickly.
You can jump back from the first primary wave often to secondary and third, fourth, and extended like that. This time's when I reckon I've probably done about 500 kilometres.
The chances of something bad happening are high. You're flying at quite low altitudes over remote areas and they're full of crocodiles.
If a surfer were to go too far into the back end of the wave, he wipes out. Equally, we wipe out too, but I think with probably more disastrous consequences.
I think you'd only have maybe a dozen people in the world that really have done it. Unique, that's for sure.
The word hasn't spread much yet. It's good to share it with everybody, but I wouldn't like to see it becoming like a traffic jam.
Generally 10 or 15 minutes into the flight, the sun comes across the top of the cloud, and when you look back at that site with this fantastic golden sun breaking behind it, it's you swear that you're in heaven. It's that good.
Thank you. So finally, the last change I just wanted to talk about is this one with and there's just a few more slides to show, is this one that is the one that has come out of the Cloud Appreciation Society. So this is the Asperitas cloud, and I think we just need to go back to my presentation for a minute. Yeah, here we go. So the Asperitas cloud, this came about as photographs were sent in, as I say, from around the world. Back in 2006, we had some that came in from Iowa in the States, and I noticed that they had this very dramatic appearance to them, this sort of wavy, chaotic, wavy appearance, as if you're looking up from beneath the sea on a turbulent, windy day. And I knew, of course, that there's a term for wave clouds, undulatus, but this seemed distinctive. It seemed that it stood out from the normal undulatus clouds. And I thought, maybe there is a case for this having a name of its own, a classification of its own. In 2008, I proposed that, and it's really wonderful to see that this is coming to this conclusion now, where the International Cloud Atlas, the WMO, and the task team of the WMO have chosen to include it in this definitive reference work. One interesting thing about it is that it's come as a result of technology. The technology and a network of general people, not official weather observers, but the general public. And one way that's happened has been, we've got this app, this iPhone app, and the good thing about it is, it shows you different types, normal stuff. But the one thing about it is, when you take a photograph of the cloud type with the app, you say what type of cloud it is, and I included the Asperitas cloud a long time ago, even though it wasn't official yet. I included it because I thought it would be good to get examples of people spotting this cloud around the world. So they did take photographs, and the great thing is that, of course, when you take a photograph with a smartphone, you get a timestamp and a location stamp. So this presents data. And the great thing as well is that the use of this app is that we have a team of members of the Cloud Appreciation Society in the background, real people who decide if you've guessed the cloud or judged the cloud correctly or not. And they will then say, they look at the website and they say yes, no. But we've had almost 300,000 photographs come in through this so far, and each one of them has been looked at by a person. So it's an amazing small team of cloud moderators who are in the background. And what that means is we get a set of data. So this has led to some research. We've got a scientific paper coming out that I've done in conjunction with the University of Reading. They have researched the climatic conditions, the atmospheric conditions, that were around when observations were made through the app. So there, someone's there, they take a picture of the cloud, and then we've got someone a little bit later, half an hour later, someone over there's taken a picture of the same cloud. And then we've got there over Belgium, this was a formation that appeared over Belgium. And so these have given us data that can be looked into and have helped us understand what causes this cloud type. So it's really come as a result of technology and the general public becoming interested in clouds. So why is it important to know the names of clouds? When we know the name of something, we begin to have a relationship with it. And that's really what this is about. It's beginning to become familiar with these characters of the sky. And when you become more familiar with something, you value it more. That is really, I think, the most important thing here, from my point of view, is something like the International Cloud Atlas helps people understand more about the sky. And the more we understand about our shared atmosphere, the more we will pay attention to looking after it. So I want to remind you to look up and marvel at the ephemeral beauty. And always remember to live life with your head in the clouds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Penny. Before we continue, we unfortunately must say goodbye to the students of the Bude Middle School, but we would like to thank them for joining us today. Okay. Okay. At this stage, I would like to invite members of the audience who wish to ask questions to our distinguished panelists. Please.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm here since many, many years, and today is my 80th birthday, which is quite an event. I think there's another colleague who has birthday today from Switzerland. I'm not sure whether he's here. Now, I'm president of ISEO. That's the International Sustainable Energy Organization, founded here in these holy halls 2002. with the Professor Bassi at that time. Now let me turn from the poetic side of clouds, these wonderful clouds, to the technical energy side, which is very important. It is very thoughtful and timely to put this year clouds in the limelight, following up on the legendary Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which is a historical consensus. We never had such a consensus in the history of the UN. Indeed, clouds have a major influence on clean, sustainable energy, especially their rain. We should talk more about the product of the clouds, which is rain. Hydropower, the number one and one of the oldest clean power sources, could not function without the rain from clouds. And in fact, in Switzerland, we have 60% of our energy comes from clouds, from rain, hydropower. Biomass, the oldest energy in human history, biomass, woods and so on, depends on clouds, depends on rain. Otherwise, biomass couldn't grow. Even wind power has also a relationship with cloud movements. And even solar energy, the biggest renewable energy source, it supplies 10,000 times the energy we need daily from the sun. Of course, they depend a bit, solar energy depends on the shadow from the clouds, which is maybe a negative effect, but very, very important. So on this occasion, let me thank to WMO and the whole team for the indispensable support of sustainable energy development with so much data, and we hope we have more data because our sustainable energy development depends really on your data, because all the renewable energies depend on weather, on the clouds. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Would anybody else like to ask a question?
A question or a comment. I very much appreciated Mr. Peter-Pinny's remarks. My mother, who died a few years ago, was a great lover of clouds. She would spend a lot of time looking at them and enjoying their beauty. Cloud appreciation, however, is a domain which is extremely important to the painters of this world. Constable, Turner, and Vermeer, for example. The colors of clouds, if you follow the girl with the pearl earring, he asks her, what color is that cloud? And of course everybody'd say gray. And then she says, no, it's green, it's blue, it's red. You said nothing of that, sir. That, to me, is an element of appreciation which must be recognized. Some of the greatest art paintings of the world are basically of clouds with a little bit of earth beneath.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, the clouds and the sky have always presented both an inspiration and a challenge for painters. And two of those painters that you mentioned, Constable and Turner, were both heavily influenced. Well, Constable was certainly heavily influenced by Luke Howard, that gentleman who came up with this, really the beginning, the genesis of the naming system. You can see on the back of Constable's paintings, he would write the cloud formations and weather data, because he really saw his paintings as being a form of experimentation and inquiry into the natural world. And you probably know that there were 2 years in 1820 to 22, I think, when Constable dispensed with the ground in his landscapes, and he just painted cloud studies for those 2 times. They weren't intended for exhibition. They were small and they were done fast, and as a result they have this great freedom in the way they're painted. They feel more modern actually than Constable's paintings for exhibition. And so he described the sky as the chief
organ of sentiment in his paintings, as the keynote. So you're absolutely right. Painters have always been inspired by and challenged by the whole idea of being able to capture and faithfully depict the sky in their paintings.
Compliment. So the mission of Spain here in Geneva, they have asked us to co-host an event which is related to art and weather, and we are planning to host such an event here October this year. So you are most welcome to enjoy also that event.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I don't know whether Luke Howard is your honorary member number 1 of the Cloud Appreciation Society, but if he is, maybe honorary member number 2 should be Goethe, the great German poet, because he played almost an equally important role in the classification of cloud. Of course, the one written was the one by Luke Howard, but he also played a very, very critical role in that, and they exchanged a lot of correspondence, the two of them.
That's absolutely right. Yes, Goethe was a great lover of the sky. And he, as well as Percy Shelley, were both influenced by the work of Luke Howard. And Percy Shelley did that poem, The Cloud. And they, in their different ways, saw this science of naming the forms in the sky as an inspiration for their art of poetry. And it's a wonderful example, this whole time of the first half of the 19th century, when it comes to this, when you think in terms of the birth of the science of meteorology, is a wonderful time for the interbreeding or the interconnectivity between science and art. And Goethe is a great example of that. Yeah, I'll make him an honorary member, absolutely.
I just have, thank you for organizing this. I just have a simple question. I'm a man who has grown in the rural area in the East African region, and I used to look after cows or cattle running all over the place, unlike the Swiss who tie theirs in houses. But you know, animals also sometimes seem to have some connection with the observation of the sky or the clouds. What used to amaze me, but today you are trying to bring to my mind, is that whenever I was with my cows in the field, and a very, very dark clouds would come, and when I see these animals jumping, running up with their tails up, I know it is going to be a very, very heavy rain. And actually, a very, very heavy rain would come. I don't know how this kind of relationship, interpretation, came about. I think Pini could probably help me here. Thank you.
Yes, so interesting to talk about the sensitivity of animals like the cattle have to what's happening with the weather. You can quite imagine that it's evolutionarily helpful for animals and insects to be in tune with the weather. They can prepare to move somewhere if they think there's going to be a deluge. So it makes sense for them from an evolutionary point of view. And in a way, it's kind of it's almost like a way of thinking about the connection to the weather that many of us have lost. If you think about the clouds as the expressions on the face of the atmosphere, well, in some ways we've learned, and I'm talking about the general public, and even farmers have learned or have lost our ability to read the significance of those expressions, because we rely so heavily on the meteorologists, and we rely I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but of course you do find that there's a sense of disconnection that can happen. You don't know, you wonder what the weather's like, and you go and look it up on your phone. You could just look out the window, but there is this tendency to get it from technology. So our ability to see into the future was ridiculed at first when people first proposed the idea of forecasting the weather. Back in the UK, when Fitzroy proposed the idea of us forecasting the weather, he was laughed at in Parliament. And so this idea of us being able to look forward into the weather is amazing, that we can now do this and that we have such good information over the next few days of what's happening. But the flip side is that we have lost some of the connections which of course animals still have, and farmers to some degree have as well, because they're looking at the local changes in the weather because their livelihoods depend upon it. But it is interesting to see how in tune animals are to the atmosphere.
Please.
Thank you. I understand we're in the process of nominating posthumously people to the Cloud Appreciation Society. In that case, may I nominate William Wordsworth, who penned the words, "I wander lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills." Thank you.
Yeah, it's all the romantic poets were good ones. I should just do like a block membership for the lot of them, probably, shouldn't I? To save some of the admin. Wordsworth's a good example. Yeah, I mean, he also said in the prelude, I can't remember the exact wording, which is kind of important when it comes to poetry, but he said, if I wander and have a lonely cloud as my guide, I shall never lose my way. Something along those lines. So, yeah, I think if you follow the clouds, you'll never be lost.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we will now be treated to a short musical performance by Mr. Andrea Amanti, a musician and pianist of the UN Choir.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I'm Andrea. I'm from Italy. I'm the official pianist of UN, many events, Parade Nazionale, even here. Today is my first time here, so I'm glad to be with you. I will sing and play for you two songs. The first, you might know, is a mashup, a medley of two famous songs. I want to see if you have studied. Basically, the key phrase says, "Someday I'll wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me." Maybe somebody, you can do a quiz, who answers first, win a little peluche, maybe. And the second is, well, I see skies of blue, I see clouds of white. I'll let you discover.
light of that well, you'll find me and somewhere over the rainbow, bluebird fly. Dream that you tend to, oh why can't I? Merci à tout le monde. Thanks. The second is more rain related, so it's Remember When It Rained by Josh Groban. Wash away that thought inside, keep my mind away from you. No more love and no more pride, and thoughts are all I have to do. Remember when it rained, fell the ground and looked up and call your name. Remember when it rained, in the darkness I'll remain. Tears of hope run down my skin, tear for you that will not cry, that magnify the one within, and let the old side slowly die. Remember when it rained, fell the ground and looked up and called your name. Remember when it rained, in the water I remain, running down, running down, running down, running down, running down, running down, running down. Oh, oh, running down, running down. Oh, running down, running down.
Thank you very much, Mr. Monti,
You're
for that
welcome.
beautiful performance. We now conclude the official part of our celebration. As you leave the hall, may I invite you to please admire the photographs that are hanging outside of the conference room. These photos were submitted through a Facebook contest for the WMO 2017 calendar. We received nearly 500 entries, all of them beautiful and stunning images. We would like to thank our Facebook fans for their enthusiastic response. May I also invite you to please take some of our brochures and some of our books that are outside.
Could you just say that the Facebook Live reached 500,000 people?
I was just advised that the Facebook Live webcast reached 500,000 people. So. As our Secretary General mentioned, you are cordially invited to join us for the reception at the attic on the top floor of this building. There you will have traditional dishes from 5 continents that have been that will illustrate the culinary talents of the WMO staff. Thank you very much for joining us.